Shabbat Shalom. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. Welcome once again to this parasha of this Shabbat, Parashat Tzaw, which means give a command or order. In this parasha, we will see something very amazing. It has a lot to do with sacrifices, but also has a lot of in-depth what the sacrifices are, and we will find out exactly what the Creator meant about sacrifices themselves. So let's jump into it. And right before we do that, I want to also remind you, the newcomers, that if you have not subscribed, please do so, because we are currently in production of a lot of videos that are on the way. A lot of themes, a lot of topics that we are covering right now with the docu-series about the Torah calendar. We are in the 6th one. I'm working on the 7th, which is coming up very, very soon. And also there is a new docu-series coming right after that, which is the 10 Lost Tribes in America. Now, once again, all this is coming very soon to our channel. But once again, if you have not subscribed, you will not be notified with this. So please subscribe so you can get notifications in the future of upcoming videos. So let's jump into this Parashat Tzaw. Is very intriguing to know how the Creator starts off with this command, this Tzaw, and let's just jump into it right away. It's number 25 of the sequence of parashot throughout the entire year, chapter 6, verse 8 of Vayikra or Leviticus, all the way to L3DT. Yahweh said to Moshe, give this Tzaw, this command to Aaron and his children. This is the Torah for burnt offerings. The word burnt offering in Hebrew is olah. It is which goes up in its wood for the fire on the mizbeach or altar all night until morning. In this way, the fire on the altar will remain burning. Now, let's stop here for a moment. Let's jump into what the word Tzaw means. We know that there are 613 mizbots. The word mizbot comes from the root Tzaw, which means to command, to give an order. This command that Aaron needed to have to pass on to his children was something that they needed to follow all the way through to the nitty-gritty. What I mean by that means that they could not skip a bit, and the reason for it is because all has a lot to do with the sacrifices. Now let me just elaborate a little bit on the sacrifices. When Yahweh commanded sacrifice to begin with, is because of our father's disobedience. What happened? Well, what happened was that our fathers disobedient with idolatry. Remember when they sacrificed, so they made the golden calf? Why do you think it's called the Ark of the Covenant or the Ark of the Testimony? The word testimony, every time you see it, where it says the tent of the testimony or the tablets of the testimony, is because they're attesting of what they did in Mount Sinai with the golden calf. That's what is called the Ark of the, or the tent of the testimony, because Yahweh is reminding our forefathers what they've done. And this is something that we need to take in consideration. Why we always see little glimpses here about certain things. It has a lot to do with us too. We have to understand how the Creator speaks with us, especially on the Torah. Another thing that we want to go over, and let me just go back over here. The word for burnt offerings, the word is olah. Olah means to ascend. That's why every time we read the Torah portions, there are 7 aliyahs. Aliyah or oles. There's another word for that, oles. The word olah means to ascend, same as olah or ole means to ascend. That's why when we read the Torah portions, the aliyah means to ascend to Yahweh. Why? Because the Creator wants us to not to go downgrade, but to upgrade to the Creator, another level of understanding Torah. It is considerably for us to learn Torah and to ascend one level, one step every year, at least. Supposed to be more, but at least one level. The reason why we don't do that is because we don't follow the directions of our Creator. Now let's talk about elaborate a little bit more of the sacrifices. Why did the Creator need sacrifices? Well, to begin with, our Creator did not command about sacrifices. And the Creator says very clear. He says in the very beginning, I did not demand sacrifices. All I command to the children of Israel was obey my word. But what happened? Our fathers disobeyed the word. And so what was the result? Burned sacrifices. Why? Because that sacrifice is replacing the person who's supposed to give this life. Why? Because remember, if it wasn't because Moshe had to go up there another 40 days to mediate for our forefathers, that's why when he said, quote unquote, I will go up there if I can actually redeem you. Do you see this? We are seeing the foreshadow of our Mashiach here. We see it over and over again, this pattern, this principle of Mashiach. Now, when these sacrifices are taking the place of the person who has sinned. Now, we have to see a lot of glimpses here because I truly believe that is our call, our duty to always decipher what the Torah commands us. But now what's written nowadays with the new Bibles, quote unquote, but we need to go back to the Hebrew. We need to go back and decipher word for word, tittle by tittle, and everything that the Creator is telling us. The problem is that we always give this, I would say, credit to the scholars of the Bible to believe what they said instead of doing our duty to search for the Word, and believe me, we'll find even more. Now let's continue. Leviticus or Vayikra 4 verse 5. The Chachochen Mashiach, anointed officer, will take some of the blood from the bull and bring it to the Mishkan, or the tent of the meeting, now of the testimony. Now this is the first time where you will see the anointed officer, the anointed priest. This gives a glimpse of our Mashiach as the anointed Kohen, the anointed priest. This is one of the reasons why I always give glimpses of the Mashiach here. And this is one of the key points on this very verse where he yields to the Mashiach. Now the word for korban, as we stated last week, korban means a present, a gift, an offering, but also it means to draw near. Our Creator wants us to draw near to the Creator. How can we bring a korban? How can we bring an offering to the Creator nowadays? See, what Ecclesiastes 1:9 says very clear, what it was, it will be again. The history repeats itself. We need to do the same thing as our forefathers did. What did they bring to our Creator? David said very clear. He said to give an offerings of our lips. You see that? Today we can do that because in reality it was coming from the inside out, not from the outside in. You see that? The Creator always working from inside out. And this has been doing it for so many years, for so many centuries, since day one. Now, how can we give offerings to the Creator? I just mentioned it. Through our lips, by singing, by offering a tefillah, which is prayer. There's a lot of things we can offer to our Creator. The Mikdash, the temple, is not there anymore. So, once again, the Mashiach says very clear, and he prophesied very clearly with the Samaritan woman when he said, I will tell you, woman, that in this mountain or the other mountain would offer to the Creator, Yahweh. But everywhere where those who want to worship will worship in the Spirit, in Ruach, and also in Emet, in truth. And that's what we are all about. Leviticus 6 verse 7, Vayikra, in the Torah parch or scroll is verse 26. Thus the Kohen or official will make atonement for him before Yahweh, and he will be forgiven concerning whatever he did that make him guilty. Now this verse, straight out of the verse, says very clear that appears that the Kohen was the one who made the sin. But in reality, that's not the case. In reality, you have to think for a moment. The first question that we need to ask is, the Kohen is supposed to be anointed, right? Which is stated a few moments ago. Second, he needed to be clean, not only from the outside, but from the inside also as well. That gives us to believe that he had to be completely perfect in the eyes of Yahweh. So it doesn't make any sense that he's the one guilty one. He's the guilty party, or he's the one who's making atonement for him. It doesn't make any sense. I truly believe, and we will see next, that the lying pen, for so many years they've been lying to us. They've been telling us a lot of things that are not there. It is our duty to do our work, our homework, to search for the truth. And that's what this channel is all about. Now, let's make it clear next. Chapter 6 verse 2. If anyone sins and acts wickedly against Yahweh by dealing falsely with his neighbor concerning the deposit of pledge entrusted to him, by stealing from him, by extorting money from him. Now, here we see very clear that if anyone acts wickedly against Yahweh, against his neighbor, whatever he's doing it falsely. Here we see very clear that he's not only doing it to our Creator, but he's doing it to the neighbor as well. He's the guilty party. Now, what's the deal with the priest? What's the deal with the official? The official's duty and work was to mediate in behalf of the person who have sinned, in behalf of the person who's bringing the offering. All he's doing is bringing the offering to Yahweh in behalf of this person who have sinned. Isn't it a foreshadow of our Mashiach? Chapter 53 of Isaiah says very clear, the Mashiach, this servant of Yahweh, will carry the sins of the nation, would die for the sins of the nation, would take our sins, would take our illness, would take our everything that humanity brings to the table, which is sin and wickedness. Mashiach is carrying all that for all of us. That's why he's the Mashiach. And I want to bring something very important, very crucial. Chapter 4 is verse 3. Now let's get into the meaty, and let's go into the Hebrew. And you can check it out for yourself. I'm just bringing it to you so you can search it out later. Verse 3 says, if the anointed Kohen, which is the HaKohen HaMashiach, bringing a guilty upon the people for his sin he has committed, he will offer to Yahweh as a scapegoat sacrifice a young bull without blemish. So it seems once again that the Kohen, the high priest, is the one bringing the guilt offering for himself and also for the nation. But in reality, when you see the Hebrew, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that the Kohen is bringing a sin offering for himself. What the scripture says very clear, as we will see next. Look at what it says here, and let's break it down. Then, if it is the Chachoken HaMashiach, which is the anointed official, who in Hebrew is Ha-Chata, which means bear the guilt. And the next one is Le-Ashmat, which means according to the offense. And the next word is in Hebrew, Cha'am, which means of the nation. So in other words, it says, if the anointed official bears the guilt according to the offense of the nation, do you see that? Will offer for the sins on which he is guilty without blemish, a bull without blemish as a sin offering to Yahweh. Do you see this here? We see very clear that the anointed official is he's bearing that guilt for the nation. He's literally carrying that guilt for the nation. Isn't it what Mashiach did? Isn't it what the servant of Yahweh had to do? His mission to bear the guilt, to carry the guilt of the nation. See, all this, what I'm saying, is something that we see it before in the Torah. We're not making it up. Let me give you a few examples. Remember when Judah or Yehudah, one of the brothers of Yosef, out of the 12, Yehudah or Judah happens to be one of them. Remember when they were in Egypt and they were there to buy grain, to buy food, to make loaf bread, right? To make food. Remember what he said when Yosef said to them, Benjamin is going to stay here. I will not let him go. Remember that Judah made a covenant with his father, Yaakov, and he said, if I don't bring it to you, I will bear the guilt. I will bear that guilt. And he said it again to Yosef. I told my father, if I don't bring him back, I will bear that guilt. It's the same word we see here. Okay? Same word we see here. Chachata. Okay? As the Kohen. He's bearing that guilt. Mashiach is doing the same thing. See, there's a lot of things that they don't tell us, and they will not tell us, especially our Jewish brothers. But here we see very clear that the main thing, the main work in that the duty that the Kohen had to do is to bear the guilt, to be a mediator for the people. Now let's go into another one. Leviticus 4:26. All his fat will go up in the smoke on the altar or the Mizbeach like the fat of the sacrifice of Shalom offering. Thus the Kohen will make atonement for himself concerning sin, and he will be forgiven. Do you see that? For himself. It doesn't make any sense, once again, that this verse is saying that he's the one sinning. He's bringing this atonement for himself. But it doesn't make any sense because, once again, let's stop here for a few seconds. A lot of people take a lot of things out of context. We need to see the whole picture. We need to read the whole verse, the whole chapter, to understand what the scriptures is talking about. And here is another example, okay? And look at what it says here, and let's go once again in Hebrew. For all the fat shall be rising in smoke upon the Mizbeach, the altar, like the fat for the sacrifice of Shalom offering. So the Kohen will make kapar, will make an atonement to bear the guilt. You see that? And he will be forgiven. Who is the one being forgiven? Verse 22 is saying it. That's what I'm saying. We cannot afford to take things out of context. If we are here in the business of learning Torah, to be a Talmid, to be a disciple of the Mashiach, we need to understand things that are on context, not out of context. Here, read the whole chapter. You will see that the Kohen is all he's doing is bearing that guilt of somebody's. Verse 22 says that person was the one who is the guilty party. Now let's move on. Chapter 17, verse 11. For the life of all flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you in the Mizbeach altar to make atonement for yourself, for it is the blood that makes atonement for life. See, we have to understand something very crucial, brothers and sisters. We have to understand that our Creator is asking for blood to make an atonement. Why? Because blood, the life is in the blood. We have to understand a lot of concept of the sacrifices. There are 4 kinds of sacrifices, okay? And one of them is Asham. Asham is the one we just saw. Asham is the one that our Mashiach bear for the nation. Which nation? The nation of Israel. Now, I'll prove it to you right now, but before that, let me also make clear that there were different kinds of social status. People who have a lot of money, people who didn't have much but could bear ends meet, and could be, we can say, middle class, and the third would be probably the people who are really, really poor, could not afford it. People who have money could afford a lamb, a bull, something that could pay the money. A middle class, somebody who can hardly afford, will be pigeons or doves. And person who couldn't afford a thing at all had to bring flour. Now, but if we see once again in this verse, it says very clear that to make an atonement for yourselves, the blood that makes atonement for life, because the life is in the blood. We see that very clear here. So how are we going to fix this issue with this person who doesn't have a lot of money but can only afford flour to bring an offering? Very simple. The Kohen HaGadol, the high official, was bringing another atonement, burn it on the altar, and then get the offering from that person who was poor, bring the flour, and pour it on the atonement that had blood, and that will go up in smoke. That was the reason, and it was fulfilled where the Torah says the blood that makes the atonement for life. The Torah is very clear when it comes to all that. Now, let's move on for the last thing, closing. Here we see very clear that the life is in the blood. So if life is in the blood, that means Yahweh demand blood for the atonement. Mashiach came to give our life, his life for ours. He's the one bearing the sin of all the children of Israel. Now let me make it clear when I say all the children of Israel. A lot of people and a lot of Christians and Messianics said that he came for the whole wide world. But in reality, if you look into the Torah context, in the scriptures, in the Hebrew context, you will see that Israel, especially the 10 tribes, are scattered around the world, in the 4 corners of the world. That means they are everywhere. It's very clear that our Mashiach was very clear when he came to that covenant. See, chapter in Jeremiah 31:13 31 says very clear. Yahweh says, in those days. And every time we see the phrase in those days, is referring to the era of the Mashiach, the Messianic era, which is right now. In these days, the Messianic era, Mashiach is making a covenant with us. But let's go back to Jeremiah 31:31. He says, I will make a covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not the way I made the covenant with your forefathers over there in the wilderness. So in other words, our Creator is making a renewed covenant. Look it up in the Hebrew. In that verse 31, it says, Berit Chadashah. Berit Chadashah means renew covenant. This renewed covenant, our Mashiach is doing it again. Now, please write it down because it's now because we're closing. Hebrews chapter 8 and also chapter 10 is Paul is making a reference of Jeremiah 31:31. It says very clear that in those days I will make a covenant with the same people he made a covenant in the very beginning, which is Israel, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. So in other words, Yahweh has not changed. People have changed. But Yahweh is the same thing as the one he was in the past, right now, and in the future. He will never change. Because he's the same one who was talking to our forefathers in the wilderness, to Moshe, to our father Abraham, and our forefathers before that. So let's go into closing. Mashiach says very clear, and I know that I want you to check this out, okay? Let's go real quick. Matthew 26, verse 28. In this verse, this is in the Shem Tov Hebrew, it says, this is my blood of the Berit Chadashah, which is a renewed covenant, which will be shed for the sake of the community of Israel for atonement for iniquities. Now this verse is being changed by the lying pen, by the lying scholars of the Bible, quote unquote. Those who are being hiding in the Vatican, in the secular world, and also the Christian world have changed so many things nowadays, and is still changing for worse. If you go to the Hebrew Matthew, you will see very clear the Mashiach says two things: the Berit Chadashah, which is the renewed covenant. Number two is that he's shedding the blood for the community of Israel. You see that very specifically. No wonder why Yochanan, when he said, there is the Lamb of Yahweh who came to redeem, not to take away, but to redeem the sins of the world. Which world? Israel among the nations. I am Moreh Rapha'Yah. We'll see you next time. Please subscribe if you haven't, so you can get more notifications that we are bringing continuously in these days. Shalom, shalom, and Shabbat shalom. We'll see you next time.
To our channel and give us a like. Thank you. We'll begin.